The air in courtroom 3B was so cold it felt like glass. Elena Sanchez, 8 months pregnant, could barely breathe. Across the aisle, her husband, Marcus Thorne, wasn't just divorcing her, he was trying to destroy her, claiming he was bankrupt. But as he sat there, he couldn't stop smiling. A sly, private smile aimed at his mistress Isabella, sitting in the front row. He smiled as his lawyer called Elena greedy. He smiled as he lied under oath. And he was still smiling when Elena, clutching her stomach, collapsed onto the cold marble floor. But his smile vanished the moment Judge Harding cleared her throat and said, "Mr. Thorne, this court has received a file on your secret account." The hum of the fluorescent lights in courtroom 3B was a high, thin scream beneath the surface of everything. It was a sound Elena Sanchez felt in her teeth. At 8 months pregnant, every sensation was amplified, the hard, unforgiving oak of the bench against her spine, the ache in her swollen ankles, and the suffocating weight of the designer suit she'd bought in another lifetime. A lifetime where Marcus Thorne was a name that meant safety, not the man sitting 30 feet away, meticulously adjusting his silk tie. Elena's lawyer, Sarah Jenkins, a woman with a sharp bob and even sharper eyes, leaned in. "He's going to lie, Elena. We know he's going to lie. His financials are a fantasy. We just have to stay calm and poke the holes. You just breathe." Breathe. It was like trying to breathe water. The heavy doors at the back of the courtroom opened, and a click-clack of heels on marble announced their arrival. It wasn't just Marcus. He was with her. Isabella Rossi. She was everything Elena was not. She was sculpted, tanned, and wearing a tight emerald green dress that screamed money. Her black hair was ironed straight, a sheet of glass falling over her shoulders. She scanned the courtroom with a look of bored entitlement, her eyes landing on Elena's swollen stomach for half a second. A flicker of something amusement crossed her lips before she took her seat directly behind Marcus, a silent, smug declaration of support. Marcus turned just slightly and gave Isabella a look. It wasn't a full smile, not yet. It was a private, shared glance of confidence. "Don't worry, baby. I've got this." Elena felt the baby kick a hard, sharp jab against her ribs, as if the child itself could feel the betrayal. "All rise," the bailiff boomed. Judge Elizabeth Harding entered. She was an older woman, not to be trifled, with her face a roadmap of difficult decisions. She sat, adjusted her robes, and looked over her spectacles. "Case 34B, Thorne v. Thorne. I have reviewed the preliminary filings. Mr. Croft, you may begin." Marcus's lawyer, Alan Croft, a silver-haired shark in a $5,000 suit, stood. "Thank you, Your Honor. What we have here is a simple yet tragic end to a marriage. My client, Mr. Marcus Thorne, a man who has given everything to his business, and his wife, finds himself on the brink of financial ruin. His consulting firm, Thorne Advisory, is facing insolvency due to market downturns. And now Ms. Sanchez, who I must add has not worked a day since their marriage, is seeking to liquidate his last remaining assets. She is demanding the marital home 100% of his non-existent liquid assets and punitive spousal support. It is, in a word, opportunism. She sees a sinking ship and is trying to grab the last life raft." Elena gasped. "That's not quiet, Ms. Sanchez." Judge Harding warned, her voice flat. Elena's hands trembled. Not worked. She had managed their entire life, their properties, their social obligations. She had been his unpaid business manager for 5 years, running the books for his consulting firm, while he networked, which she now knew meant wining and dining Isabella. "Mr. Croft," Judge Harding said, "let's stick to the assets, shall we? Your client's filing claims he has a total liquid worth of $14,000, and over $1.2 million in business debt. That is correct, Your Honor, Croft said smoothly. We have the ledgers to prove it. Sarah Jenkins stood. Your Honor, we will prove that those ledgers are a work of fiction. Mr. Thorne's spending has not decreased. It has simply been rerouted. We contend that Mr. Thorne is hiding substantial marital assets. Judge Harding nodded. A common and serious allegation, Ms. Jenkins. You will have your chance to prove it. Mr. Croft, call your first witness. We call Marcus Thorne to the stand. Marcus stood. He straightened his jacket, shot his cuffs, and walked to the stand with the easy confidence of a man who had never faced a single consequence in his life. He passed Elena's table. He didn't look at her. He didn't look at her pregnant belly. He looked past her toward the gallery, where Isabella Rossi was watching him with undisguised adoration. He placed his hand on the Bible, his $10,000 Omega watch glinting under the lights. I, Marcus Thorne, do solemnly swear. Elena locked eyes with him. Liar. He met her gaze, his eyes perfectly, terrifyingly blank. The void where a husband used to be. It wasn't always like this. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, the drone of Alan Croft's voice fading, and she was back on Willow Creek Drive. She was standing in the empty, sun-drenched foyer of their first home, the smell of fresh paint and sawdust. Marcus had come up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, kissing her neck. It's perfect, isn't it? He'd whispered. Our forever home. He had been so charming, so ambitious. Marcus Thorne, the man who could talk anyone into anything. He'd come from a middle-class family, but he had ambition that burned like a furnace. Elena, whose family had quiet old money from a successful manufacturing business in Chicago, had been captivated by his drive. Her parents had been wary. He moves too fast, Elena, her father, Richard Sanchez, had warned. Be careful. But she loved him. She believed in him. When he wanted to start Thorne Advisory, Elena had been his biggest cheerleader. When he suggested he take over the management of her family's investment portfolio to maximize its potential, she'd agreed. You're the genius, Marcus, she'd said. The first 5 years were good. They traveled. They built a life. Then came the struggle, the negative pregnancy tests month after month, the hushed, sterile appointments at the fertility clinic, the quiet strain that settled over the house. Marcus grew distant. It's the stress from work, Lena, he'd say, kissing her forehead. The market's volatile. I have to work late. Late became a common refrain. Late meant missing dinner. Late meant coming home smelling of expensive whiskey and a faint floral perfume that wasn't hers. Late meant falling asleep on the couch, his phone clutched in his hand, screen down. The discovery was as cliché as it was devastating. It wasn't a text message. It was an email left open on his laptop in the home office. He'd been sloppy. It was a reservation confirmation. The St. Regis Zurich, King Suite, 2 guests, Marcus Thorne and Isabella Rossi. But it wasn't just the hotel. Attached was a wire transfer confirmation. A huge wire transfer, $500, $1,000. It was from an account she didn't recognize, Prometheus Holdings, to a private Swiss bank. She confronted him that night. The memory was seared into her brain. He'd just walked in, tossing his keys into the porcelain bowl by the door. How was work, Marcus? She'd asked, her voice shaking. The laptop was open on the kitchen island. Brutal. Absolutely brutal. He loosened his tie, not looking at her. I'm going to grab a shower. Who is Isabella Rossi? He froze. The mask didn't just slip, it shattered. He turned, and the man she married was gone. In his place was a cold-eyed stranger. "You've been snooping," he hissed. "You're sleeping with her. You're taking her to Zurich. What is Prometheus Holdings, Marcus? What is that $500,000 transfer?" He'd laughed, a cold, sharp sound that echoed in their perfect kitchen. "You really are naive, aren't you? You think this has been real for years. I've been carrying you, Elena. You and your sad little infertility drama. It's exhausting." I'm pregnant, Marcus." She whispered the words she had been saving, the words she thought would fix them, now turning to ash in her mouth. She'd only found out that morning. He stared at her. His face went through a rapid series of calculations. Annoyance, inconvenience, finally contempt. "Well," he'd said, buttoning his jacket, "that's a problem. You should probably call a lawyer, because I'm done." He left. 2 days later, her assets were frozen. The locks on their home were changed. The divorce papers were served by a smug courier listing his assets as negligible and his business as failing. He was petitioning for her to pay him spousal support, citing his financial distress and her significant family wealth, the same wealth he had apparently just wired to Switzerland. A sharp "Ms. Sanchez" snapped Elena back to the present. Judge Harding was looking at her. "Ms. Sanchez, your attorney asked you a question." Elena blinked, disoriented. Sarah was looking at her with concern. "Elena, I asked you to confirm that you handled all the household and many of the business-side bookkeeping duties for Thorne Advisory from 2019 to 2023. "Yes," Elena said, her voice hoarse. "Yes, I did. I paid all the bills. I managed the payroll until he locked me out of the system 6 months ago." Alan Croft waved his hand dismissively. "Bookkeeping. Secretarial work." "Your Honor," Sarah interjected, "my client holds an MBA in finance from Wharton. She wasn't bookkeeping. She was running his back-end operations." Elena looked at Marcus. He was whispering something to Croft, and they both shared a low, dark chuckle. "Mr. Thorne," Alan Croft began, his voice dripping with faux sympathy, "please describe the state of your business, Thorne Advisory." Marcus sighed, a perfect, practiced sound of a man carrying the world on his shoulders. It's a disaster, Alan. The post-pandemic market. My clients pulled out. We're hemorrhaging money. I've had to leverage my personal assets, what little I have left, just to make payroll for my last 2 employees. And your wife's claim that you are hiding assets? Marcus shook his head, looking directly at Judge Harding. "Your Honor, I wish I were. I truly do. But there's nothing to hide. My wife, Elena, she comes from a world where money is just there. She doesn't understand cash flow or debt or risk. She thinks because I wear a suit, I must be hiding a pot of gold. The pot is empty. I'm facing Chapter 11. Bankruptcy." He was good. He was so good. His testimony was a performance worthy of an Oscar. He produced bank statements, profit and loss reports, and debt schedules. To the untrained eye, it was a portrait of a failing business. But Elena knew his tricks. She'd taught him some of them. "Ms. Jenkins," the judge said, "your witness." Sarah Jenkins walked toward the stand, holding a single piece of paper. "Mr. Thorne, you claim you're bankrupt. Yet your personal credit card statement from 3 months ago, just after you filed for divorce and claimed indigence, shows a single purchase from Cartier for $72,000. Can you explain that?" The courtroom was silent. Marcus didn't flinch. "It was a business expense," he said smoothly. "A client gift to secure the new Omega account. It was a necessary expenditure." A $72,000 gift for a client while your company is, in your words, hemorrhaging money. You have to spend money to make money, Ms. Jenkins, a lesson Ms. Sanchez never understood. Who was the client, Mr. Thorne? I'm bound by a non-disclosure agreement. How convenient, Sarah muttered. Let's move on. You testified that you are facing bankruptcy. Yet you have not filed for bankruptcy. Why? I'm trying to protect my employees. I'm trying to salvage what I can. It's a matter of pride. Pride, Sarah repeated. Or is it because if you filed for Chapter 11, a trustee would be appointed to forensically examine your actual books, not these interesting documents you've provided the court? Objection, shouted Croft. Counsel is badgering the witness and speculating. Sustained, Judge Harding said. Move on, Ms. Jenkins. Sarah paced. She was losing, and she knew it. Marcus had covered his tracks. The paper trail was pristine. His lies were better than her truth. Mr. Thorne, Sarah said, changing tactics. You are aware that your wife is 8 months pregnant. I am. And you are aware that it is your child. So I've been told. A collective gasp went through the gallery. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. Are you questioning the paternity of this child, Mr. Thorne? Sarah asked, her voice dangerously low. Marcus gave a little shrug. Given the circumstances, the breakdown of the marriage, I just think it's prudent to wait for a paternity test before I'm financially committed to, well, you understand. This was new. A fresh venomous attack he'd saved just for this moment. Elena's vision blurred. He knew. He knew how desperately she'd wanted this baby. He knew they'd been to the clinic together. He was suggesting that after he left her, she had run out, and... He's a monster, Elena whispered, clutching the table. Sarah looked furious. Your Honor, this is a despicable and baseless allegation. We have the fertility clinic records. This is purely to prejudice the court against my client. Judge Harding's eyes narrowed at Marcus. Mr. Thorne, you are under oath. Do you have any evidence to support this insinuation? Just a feeling, Your Honor, Marcus said, the picture of false sincerity. A man's intuition. Elena felt a sharp, twisting pain in her abdomen. It wasn't the baby kicking. It was a cramp, deep and hot. She put a hand over her belly, trying to breathe through it. Calm, Elena, Sarah whispered, returning to the table. He's just trying to get a rise out of you. Don't let him. But the pain was real, and it was getting worse. The defense calls Isabella Rossi to the stand, Alan Croft announced. This was a surprise. Sarah stiffened beside Elena. They're putting the mistress on the stand. Why, it's terrible optics. To paint me as unstable, Elena whispered, the pain in her stomach coiling tighter. To prove the marriage was over long before he got caught. Isabella walked to the stand, her emerald dress rustling. She sat crossed her long legs and smiled sweetly at the judge. She swore her oath, her voice a breathy soprano. Elena's eyes were drawn, as if by a magnet, to the glittering diamond and emerald necklace around Isabella's throat. It was a serpent, its eyes tiny emeralds. It was magnificent, and Elena knew with a certainty that made her sick that it was the $72,000 client gift from Cartier. Ms. Rossi, Croft began, how long have you been in a relationship with Mr. Thorne? About 18 months, sir, Isabella said, fluttering her eyelashes. So your relationship began before Mr. Thorne separated from his wife? Yes, Isabella said without a trace of shame. Marcus was so unhappy. He was in a dead, loveless marriage. Elena, Mrs. Thorne, she was cold. She was obsessed with her family's money and, well, with her infertility issues. It's all she ever talked about. Marcus needed an escape. He needed someone who appreciated his mind, his ambition. Objection, Sarah snapped. Ms. Rossi has no foundation to speak on my client's state of mind or the state of the marriage. This is hearsay and character assassination. Sustained. Ms. Rossi, Judge Harding said, her tone icy. You will confine your answers to your own knowledge and actions. You are not a marriage counselor. Of course, Your Honor, Isabella said, her smile wavering for a second. And during these 18 months, Croft continued, did Mr. Thorne ever give you expensive gifts, lavish you with money he claimed in this court not to have? It was a smart move. Croft was anticipating Sarah's cross-examination. Goodness, no. Isabella laughed. Marcus was very clear. His business was struggling. He was supporting a wife who refused to work. I actually paid for many of our dates. I have my own career, you know. I'm a brand consultant. Elena nearly choked. Brand consultant. She was an Instagram model. So you were not kept by Mr. Thorne? Absolutely not. I love him for him, Isabella said, turning her gaze to Marcus. And then it happened. Marcus, who had been watching Isabella with a soft, proud expression, turned his head. His eyes locked with Elena's. He saw her watching him. He saw her pain, her humiliation, her pregnant belly. He lifted the corner of his mouth in a tiny, almost imperceptible smirk. It was a smirk of pure, unadulterated victory. It said, I win. I have her, I have your money, and you are nothing. You and that problem you're carrying. It was the single cruelest thing he had ever done. And it broke her. The hot, coiling pain in Elena's abdomen suddenly exploded. It was a blinding, white-hot agony that ripped a sound from her throat. She cried out a sharp, terrified gasp. Elena! Sarah whirled around. Elena's hand flew to her stomach. The room tilted. The fluorescent hum screamed. The faces of Marcus, Isabella, the judge, they all blurred into a watercolor of malice and indifference. He's lying, she managed to gasp, pushing back her chair as she tried to stand. He's lying about everything. Her legs gave out. The world went black at the edges. Elena Sanchez, 8 months pregnant, crumpled to the cold marble floor of courtroom 3B. The last thing she saw before she lost consciousness was Marcus Thorne. He wasn't rushing to her side. He wasn't shouting for help. He was looking at his lawyer, Alan Croft, with an expression of profound annoyance. The courtroom erupted. Get a paramedic! Sarah Jenkins screamed, dropping to her knees beside Elena, fumbling to feel for a pulse. Order in the court. Judge Harding's voice was a cannon shot, but it did little to stop the panic. The bailiff officer Riley was already on his radio shouting for a medical team. In the gallery, people were standing, whispering, pointing, and at the defense table, Marcus Thorne sat frozen. He looked at the scene, his pregnant wife unconscious on the floor, and his first visible instinct was to check his Omega watch. He looked at Alan Croft, exasperated, as if this was a deliberate theatrical ploy by Elena to win sympathy. Isabella Rossi, from the witness stand, simply looked disgusted. She pulled the collar of her dress away from her neck, as if the very air was now contaminated. This tableau, the frantic lawyer, the unconscious wife, the annoyed husband, and the repulsed mistress, was not lost on Judge Elizabeth Harding. Her eyes, cold as steel, burned into Marcus. She saw his impatience. She saw his complete and total lack of concern. Mr. Thorne, Judge Harding said, her voice quiet, but carrying across the suddenly silent room. Marcus looked up, startled. You will remain in this courtroom. Mr. Croft, you too. The rest of you clear the gallery. Now. Paramedics, a man and a woman named Kevin and Maria, burst through the doors with a gurney and a full kit. They swarmed Elena, cutting through the noise. "Her name is Elena. She's 34 weeks pregnant." Sarah supplied her voice, trembling. "BP is all over the place. She's tachycardic," Kevin said, strapping an oxygen mask to Elena's face. Elena's eyelids fluttered. She moaned, her hand weakly moving to her stomach. "The baby is the baby. We're going to take care of you, Elena. We're getting you to the hospital right now," Maria said soothingly. No, I can't," Elena whispered, her voice paper thin. He'll win. He'll take everything. I can't go." "Elena, you have to," Sarah pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "This isn't worth it. He's not worth it." "She's right," Judge Harding said, stepping down from the bench to stand near the group. This was no longer a hearing. It was a crisis. "Ms. Sanchez, your health and the health of your child are the only things that matter. This court will not proceed. We will place a stay on all proceedings." "Your Honor." Elena gasped, grabbing the judge's robe with a strength that surprised everyone. "He's lying. The money, Prometheus Holdings, Zurich. Please, check Prometheus." Judge Harding looked at Elena, then at Sarah, then back at the pale, sweating face on the gurney. She saw not delirium, but a desperate, lucid plea. "Prometheus Holdings," the judge repeated. She nodded slowly. "I understand. You go. We will handle this." As the paramedics lifted the gurney and rushed her out of the courtroom, Elena locked eyes one last time with her husband. The annoyance on his face had finally been replaced by something new. Fear. The moment the doors swung shut, Judge Harding turned to the men left in her courtroom. "Mr. Croft, Mr. Thorne. My chambers, now." The walk to the chambers was silent. When the door closed, Judge Harding rounded on them. "In 22 years on the bench," she seethed, "I have seen liars, cheats, and monsters, but I have never seen a display of depraved indifference as I witnessed today. Your wife, Mr. Thorne, your pregnant wife collapsed and you checked your watch." "Your Honor, I was in shock," Marcus began, his smooth voice finally cracking. "You were annoyed," Harding snapped. "You were inconvenienced, and you, Mr. Croft. You enabled this. You brought that woman to the stand purely to inflict emotional distress on a high-risk pregnant woman. It was reckless and cruel." "It was a legitimate line of defense," Croft argued. "Save it," Harding said, holding up a hand. She sat at her desk. "This hearing is over for today, but a few things are going to happen. First, I am signing a temporary order granting Ms. Sanchez exclusive use of the marital home effective immediately. Mr. Thorne, you will be escorted there to retrieve your personal effects and nothing more." "You can't do that. The house is leveraged as collateral for my business," Marcus sputtered. "Your business," the judge said, her eyes narrowing. "Ms. Sanchez said a name before she left. Prometheus Holdings. Does that name mean anything to you, Mr. Thorne?" Alan Croft's head snapped toward Marcus. He saw the flicker of panic in his client's eyes. "It's a shell corporation," Marcus said, trying to recover. "Part of my portfolio. It's defunct. Worthless." "Is it?" Judge Harding typed the name into her computer. "Because it's a very active name for a defunct company." She looked up. "I'm going to do something I rarely do. I am on my own authority issuing a subpoena duces tecum for the unredacted financials of Thorne Advisory and this Prometheus Holdings to be delivered to my chambers by 9 a.m. tomorrow. Not your curated fantasy, Mr. Croft. The raw server data. And I am appointing a neutral forensic accountant to review it. Am I clear?" "Your Honor, that is a massive overreach," Croft protested. Is it Mr. Croft? Or are you just worried about what I'll find? This court has broad discretion when it suspects perjury and fraudulent concealment of assets, especially when the health of a minor, or in this case an unborn child, is at risk. You will comply, or I will hold you both in contempt. Marcus Thorne was for the first time speechless. The mask was gone. He was just a small, terrified man who had overplayed his hand. "Get out of my courtroom," Judge Harding said. "And Mr. Thorne, pray. Pray that your wife and child are all right." Elena did not go to the hospital. Against all medical advice, she'd had the paramedics take her to a private triage room in the courthouse. The collapse, it turned out, was a severe vasovagal syncope attack, a dramatic, terrifying faint brought on by extreme emotional distress and the baby pressing on a nerve. Her blood pressure was dangerously high, but the baby's heartbeat was strong. "I am not leaving this building," Elena told a frantic Sarah Jenkins. "Not until he's stopped." She spent the next 18 hours in that room, hooked up to a fetal monitor with Sarah coordinating from the law library. Sarah's team worked through the night, energized by the judge's new aggressive stance. But the real break didn't come from them. At 8:15 a.m., a man arrived at Judge Harding's chambers. He was not a lawyer. He was a nervous-looking man in a rumpled suit clutching a briefcase. His name was David Chen. I was the CFO for Marcus Thorne." David told the judge, who had granted him an immediate ex parte meeting. "I worked for him for 6 years. I built his company with him." "What happened?" Judge Harding asked her recorder on. "He was always creative. But a year ago it got dark. He asked me to set up a shell corporation, Prometheus Holdings. He said it was for tax advantages. Then he started moving money, not just his money, client money, and his wife's money." David Chen took a shaky breath. Elena's family portfolio. He was managing it. He was systematically liquidating her assets, blue-chip stocks, bonds, and funneling the cash into Prometheus. Then wiring it to a private bank in Zurich. He was robbing her blind. Millions. "Why are you telling me this now, Mr. Chen?" "Because when I confronted him, he fired me. He threatened to frame me for it. He said he'd ruin me. And he did. He blackballed me. I can't get a job anywhere. I saw the court docket. I saw he was claiming bankruptcy. The man is sitting on at least $8 million of his wife's stolen money. I have the real ledgers, the server data, the wire transfer codes. It's all on this." He clicked his briefcase open and produced a single encrypted USB drive. "The account in Zurich. It requires two-factor authentication. His phone and this. A biometric key. He thinks I destroyed it. I didn't." He placed the small metallic key on the judge's desk. At 10:00 a.m., Judge Harding reconvened her court. Elena was there against Sarah's protests, sitting in a wheelchair next to the plaintiff's table, a paramedic standing quietly in the corner. She looked pale, but resolute. Marcus and Alan Croft were at their table. Marcus looked smug again. The 18-hour reprieve had restored his confidence. He'd produced doctored server data just as the judge requested. He believed he was still in control. "We are back on the record in Thorne v. Thorne," Judge Harding began. "Mr. Croft, this court has reviewed the data you provided. It appears to match your client's initial filings." Marcus smiled. He looked at Isabella in the gallery. She smiled back. "However," the judge continued, "this court was also visited this morning by a Mr. David Chen, a name I believe you both know." Marcus's blood ran cold. The color drained from his face. Alan Croft, for his part, looked genuinely confused. "Who? Your client's former CFO, Mr. Croft. The one he fired for incompetence 3 months ago. Mr. Chen provided this court with some discrepancies, namely the actual server data for Thorne Advisory and a shell company called Prometheus Holdings. Judge Harding nodded to the bailiff. Plug in the drive. The large monitor on the courtroom wall, usually used for video testimony, flickered to life. It was a bank interface. Banque Privée de Zurich. This, Judge Harding said, is the Prometheus Holdings account. Mr. Chen was kind enough to provide the login credentials and the biometric security key. Objection. Croft leaped to his feet. Your Honor, this is completely inadmissible. It's hacked. It's stolen. It's fruit of the poisonous tree. We haven't had time to review. Overruled Mr. Croft. This is a bench trial, and I am admitting it under the exception of evidence of a crime fraud in progress, and Mr. Thorne's perjury. The judge nodded to the clerk, who navigated to the account summary. Count balance, $8, $451, 209.34 USD. Isabella Rossi gasped. Alan Croft stared, his mouth open. He turned to his client. Marcus, what is this? Marcus was sweating, his eyes darting between the screen and the exit. It's not mine. It's a client's. It's confidential. Oh, it's yours, Mr. Thorne, the judge said. Or rather, it was yours, because Mr. Chen also provided the transaction history, the source of these funds. The screen changed. A transaction log. Line after line. Transfer from R. Sanchez Family Trust. $300,000. Liquidation of Elena Thorne Sanchez Holdings. $500,000. Transfer from R. Sanchez Family Trust. $250,000. It went on for pages. It was a systematic, brutal plundering of Elena's entire inheritance, the money her father had warned her to protect. Elena began to weep quiet, racking sobs. Not for the money, but for the sheer, calculated malice. He hadn't just left her. He had intended to leave her pregnant and penniless, having stolen her past and her future. But it's not just the deposits, Mr. Thorne, Judge Harding said, her voice like ice. It's the withdrawals. A new screen. Wire transfer. $1,200,000. Rossi Properties, LLC. Purchase of condo unit 14B. The Olympian wire transfer. $110,000. Manhattan Motors purchase. Mercedes G-Wagon. Wire transfer. $72,000. Cartier Jewelers. Judge Harding looked at Isabella Rossi. Ms. Rossi, that is a beautiful necklace. I trust you'll enjoy it for the next few hours before the court seizes it as a fraudulently transferred asset. Isabella's hands flew to the serpent necklace. Her face was a mask of horror. Marcus, you told me you were rich, she shrieked, standing up. You told me that was your money. Sit down, Ms. Rossi, or I will have you removed, the judge ordered. Alan Croft slammed his briefcase shut. Your Honor, I must immediately motion to withdraw as counsel. My client has perpetrated a fraud upon this court and upon me. He has committed perjury. I cannot and will not represent him a moment longer. Motion granted, Mr. Croft. You are excused. Croft didn't even look at Marcus. He just walked out of the courtroom. Marcus Thorne was alone at the table, staring at the $8.4 million on the screen that was no longer his. Mr. Thorne, Judge Harding said, you stand before this court a liar, a perjurer, and a thief. You have emotionally abused your pregnant wife. You have attempted to defraud this court, and you have in the process committed multiple felonies. Marcus just stared, mute. This hearing is concluded. The silence that followed Alan Croft's exit was a living thing. It was heavier than the oak-paneled walls, more absolute than the stone floor. Marcus Thorne was left utterly alone at the defense table. A captain on a ship that had not just sunk, but had been vaporized beneath his feet. He stared at the empty chair beside him, then at the 8.4 million figure still glowing on the monitor, a number that represented both his triumph and his damnation. Elena sat in her wheelchair, a paramedic hovering discreetly in the corner. Her hand was pressed flat against her belly where her child was kicking a frantic, steady rhythm against her palm. She felt an unearthly calm settle over her. The pain was gone, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. Judge Harding put her glasses back on. She looked down from the bench, not at a litigant, but at a specimen. "Mr. Thorne, you are now representing yourself. Do you have anything to say before this court renders its judgment?" Marcus opened his mouth. A dry, rasping sound came out. This is a—" He looked at Elena, his eyes wide with a new, dawning terror. "A misunderstanding, Elena. Tell them this is a mistake. We can work this out." Elena met his gaze. The man she had loved, the man who had charmed her, the man who had whispered forever in her ear was gone. This creature, this hollow-eyed shell, was all that was left. She gave a single, almost imperceptible shake of her head. "No, Marcus," she whispered. "No more." The judge's gavel struck the block, the sound like a rifle shot. "The time for working things out is long past. The judgment of this court is as follows." Marcus flinched, gripping the edge of the table. "On the matter of the divorce case 34B, Thorne v. Thorne, the divorce is granted. Based on the overwhelming evidence of, well, let's call it a preponderance of sins, I am granting this divorce on the grounds of adultery, fraudulent concealment, and extreme emotional cruelty." Elena let out a breath she felt she'd been holding for a year. It was the first domino. "On the matter of marital and separate assets," the judge continued, her voice a clinical, precise instrument. "This court finds that Mr. Thorne has engaged in a systematic criminal conspiracy to defraud his wife, Elena Sanchez, of her personal separate property. The funds contained within the entity Prometheus Holdings, totaling $8,451,209.34, are hereby declared the sole and separate property of Miss Elena Sanchez." "No." Marcus half rose from his chair. "No. That's my business. I earned that. You stole that, Mr. Thorne." Judge Harding snapped, her voice dropping an octave. "You stole it from your wife, you stole it from her family, and you did it all while lying to her, to your partners, and to this court. You will not see 1 cent of that money." The judge nodded to the clerk. "A temporary injunction is in place. By the end of this day, that account will be frozen, seized, and its contents transferred to a trust established for Ms. Sanchez. Now as to the marital home on Willow Creek Drive." Harding continued, looking at her notes. "The down payment and subsequent mortgage payments were all sourced from Ms. Sanchez's family trust, the very trust you plundered. Therefore, the home is awarded in its entirety to Ms. Sanchez." "What about my company?" Marcus whispered, his face ashen. "Your company, Thorne Advisory, is a facade. It is hereby dissolved effective immediately. A receiver will be appointed to liquidate its assets, the office furniture, the art you bought with stolen money, everything. The proceeds will be used to pay for Ms. Sanchez's legal fees, which I imagine after today will be substantial." Judge Harding looked at him, her face devoid of any emotion. "Mr. Thorne, after the receivership, you will be left with your clothing, your watches, and any personal effects you can carry out of the home, to which you will be escorted by a sheriff's deputy to retrieve with a 15-minute time limit. You are for all legal and financial purposes destitute." He was gaping, a fish pulled from water, suffocating in the open air of his own ruin. Then the judge's tone softened, but it only made her words more devastating. "And now, the most important matter. The matter of the child. Elena's heart stopped. Mr. Thorne, the judge said, leaning forward, you stood on that stand under oath, and with a casual cruelty that this court has rarely seen, you insinuated that your wife was unfaithful. You questioned the paternity of your own unborn child. You did this not because you believed it, but as a weapon. You did it to inflict pain, to poison her character, to gain leverage in a financial dispute. She took off her glasses, rubbing the bridge of her nose. A man who would use his unborn child as a tactical pawn is not a father. He is a predator. A man who would smile at his mistress while his pregnant wife collapses. He is not a man at all. Marcus was shaking his head, silent tears of self-pity streaming down his face. Please, no. This court's primary duty is to the welfare of the child, and it is this court's finding that you, Mr. Thorne, represent the single greatest threat to that child's welfare. Therefore, this court awards 100% sole legal and physical custody to Ms. Elena Sanchez. Elena burst into a sob, a raw, ragged sound of profound relief. The money was one thing. This was everything. But it does not end there, Judge Harding said. Your vile accusation has convinced me that any contact would be detrimental to the child. Your parental rights are hereby terminated. You will have no contact, no visitation, no custodial rights. You will not see this child. You will not have any say in her life, her health, or her education. On the birth certificate, the father's name will be listed as unknown. Do you understand me, Mr. Thorne? You have by your own hand erased yourself. The finality of it hung in the air. And now we come to your future, the judge said. This court is not the end of your journey. This is a civil court, but you have committed grievous crimes. Marcus looked up, confusion mixing with his terror. What? You have committed perjury under oath. You have submitted fraudulent documents to this court. You have, by the admission of your own CFO, Mr. David Chen, committed felony wire fraud and embezzlement on a massive scale. I am therefore referring this entire file, the testimony of Mr. Chen, the bank records from Zurich, the fraudulent filings, and the transcript of your own perjured testimony to the district attorney's office for immediate criminal prosecution. No! Marcus finally roared his terror, giving way to a cornered animal's rage. You can't! This is a divorce. This is a private matter. You made it a public matter when you committed felonies, Mr. Thorne. Judge Harding looked past him to the bailiff at the door. Officer Riley. The large bailiff stepped forward, his hand on his hip. Mr. Thorne is a clear and present flight risk. He has access to unknown funds, as does his associate, Ms. Rossi. He has already demonstrated a willingness to flee, evidenced by the Swiss account. Therefore, this court is remanding him to custody effective immediately. Bail is set at $10 million. The irony was acidic, a number he almost had, but now was as unreachable as the moon. Stand up, Mr. Thorne, Officer Riley said, his voice a low rumble. No. Marcus scrambled backward, his chair toppling over. No, you can't do this to me. He turned his eyes wild and locked on Elena, the true target. Elena, you did this, he screamed, his face a grotesque mask of purple rage. You planned this, you and that rat, David. He lunged toward her table. Officer Riley was on him in a second, grabbing him by his $5,000 suit jacket and spinning him around, slamming him against the table with a force that knocked the breath from his lungs. You bitch, he shrieked, his voice cracking. I gave you everything, you were nothing. You were a sad, barren society wife. I gave you a life. I gave you a life. Click, click. The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting shut was the loudest sound Elena had ever heard. Officer Riley hauled him to his feet. The swaggering, confident tycoon was gone. In his place was a sweating, disheveled, cuffed man. "You'll regret this, Elena," he spat spittle flying from his lips. "When you're all alone, you'll hear from me. This isn't over. I'll get you, if it's the last. Get him out." Judge Harding ordered, her voice flat with disgust. Marcus was dragged, struggling and cursing from the courtroom. The heavy doors slammed shut, cutting off his threats. And then, silence. The paramedic rushed to Elena's side. "Ma'am, your blood pressure." "We need to, ma'am." Elena was shaking. Not from fear. Not anymore. It was an earthquake of adrenaline, a year of terror, stress, and humiliation, finally leaving her body. Sarah Jenkins, her own face stained with tears, dropped to her knees in front of the wheelchair and grabbed her hands. "It's over." Sarah wept, laughing and crying at the same time. "Elena, it's over. You're safe. You won. You won everything." Elena looked at her lawyer, then at the bench. Judge Harding had stepped down and was walking toward her. She was no longer a judge. She was just a woman. "Ms. Sanchez," Judge Harding said, her voice gentle. "You endured a trial few could. You did not break." I almost did," Elena whispered, her voice hoarse. "When I fell, falling is not breaking," the judge replied, placing a hand on Elena's shoulder. "Breaking is when you don't get back up. And you, Ms. Sanchez, you are standing." She nodded toward Elena's stomach. "Both of you, go to the hospital. Have that baby. Give that child the life this man tried to steal from you. And do not for 1 second look back." 1 week later. The room didn't hum. It was bright-filled not with cold fluorescent light, but with the warm, buttery glow of the afternoon sun. It didn't smell of old varnish and fear. It smelled of baby powder, fresh flowers, and milk. Elena Sanchez, her hair brushed and her face clear, rocked her daughter. Lily Sanchez. She was tiny, perfect, and had a full head of dark hair. She made small cooing sounds in her sleep. Elena hadn't stopped looking at her for 3 days. The door opened, and Sarah Jenkins peeked in, a grin splitting her face. She was carrying a teddy bear the size of a small child and a stack of newspapers. "Well, hello, front page news," Sarah whispered, setting the bear in a chair. She held up the New York Post. The headline was "Blistering Thorn in the Slammer." "Wife-stealing tycoon charged in $8 million fraud." "It's everywhere," Sarah said, her voice gleeful. Marcus Thorne was denied bail. The judge deemed him an extreme flight risk and a danger to his victim. "That's you. He's at Rikers in general population. His life as he knew it is over." "What about Isabella?" Elena asked, her voice quiet. She didn't really care, but it was a loose end. "Fled," Sarah snorted. "The marshals went to the condo, your condo, by the way. The court seized it as a fraudulent transfer, and she was gone. Word is she's back in Miami trying to sell the G-Wagon before it's repossessed. She's being sued by the state and by the bank. She bet on the wrong horse and lost the entire farm. And David Chen. The DA gave him full immunity. He's the star witness for the prosecution. I heard he's already got a book deal. The Man Who Took Down Thorne, or something dramatic." Sarah pulled a chair closer, her voice softening. "He's facing 15 to 20 years, Elena. At minimum. With the evidence, he'll almost certainly get the maximum. It's really, truly done." Elena just nodded, her gaze returning to the tiny, perfect face of her daughter. That last thing he did," Sarah said, her anger returning. That lie about paternity. It was so pointlessly, monstrously cruel. I'll never understand it. Elena looked up from her daughter, and she smiled. It wasn't the tired, pained grimace Sarah had gotten used to. It was a real, slow, brilliant smile. It lit up her whole face. That's the funny part, Sarah. Funny? Sarah asked, nonplussed. Elena, it was despicable. No, it's objectively funny, Elena said. She adjusted Lily in her arms, shifting her to her other shoulder. When we were at the fertility clinic, all those years, the tests finally came back. It wasn't me, Sarah. It was never me. Sarah's eyes went wide. What? It was him, Marcus Thorne. 0 sperm count, isospermia, completely irreversibly sterile. Sarah's jaw dropped. But, how? Oh, he bribed the first doctor, Elena said, her voice light. Had the records doctored. He couldn't stand the thought of the world knowing he was less of a man. He told me the problem was unexplained. He let me believe for 5 years that my body was the one failing, that I was the broken one. So, Lily, Sarah breathed, looking at the baby with new eyes, is 100% mine and 100% from donor profile 34B, a very nice, very anonymous biology professor from Chicago with a clean bill of health and good teeth. Sarah was speechless. Why, my God, Elena, why didn't you say anything in court? We could have destroyed him with that, and let him taint that too, Elena asked, her smile fading just a little. Let him drag the clinic, the donor, my daughter's origin, through his filth. No, she was the one thing he couldn't touch. My one secret, my one piece of power. I wanted him to go to prison for the crimes he did commit, not for a lie about a child that was never ever his. Elena looked down at Lily, who was stretching her tiny arms. His final pathetic attempt to hurt me was by denying a child he could never have created in the first place. He was so busy, so obsessed with stealing my past. He didn't realize he had absolutely no part in my future. Sarah Jenkins stared at her client, then at the baby. A slow, amazed laugh bubbled up. My God, Elena, you're incredible. No, Elena said, kissing Lily's forehead. I'm just a mother. She turned to the window, the sunlight washing over them both. The courtroom was a bad dream. The fluorescent hum was gone. This was real. This was the beginning. Justice in the end was served, not just by the law, but by the truth. Marcus Thorne lost his company, his freedom, and the woman he tried to destroy. But Elena, she won. She won her freedom, she won her future, and she won the one thing that mattered more than all the money in Zurich, her daughter Lily. What did you think of Marcus's downfall? Was the judge too harsh, or did he get exactly what he deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you love stories where a strong woman overcomes the ultimate betrayal and justice is finally served, then please hit that like button. It helps our channel more than you know. And if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss another story of lies, secrets, and an ending you won't see coming. Thanks for listening.